Nobody warned Juniper Walsh that the night she tripped over a champagne bucket and sent 6 glasses of Veuve Clicquot cascading across the marble floor of the Harlow Grand Ballroom would be the night that changed the rest of her life. She remembered the sound before anything else. That crystalline, awful crash, followed by a silence that swallowed the entire room. 230 guests in black tie and diamonds, all of them turning at once. Juniper stood at the center of it, her catering uniform soaked through with $80 a glass champagne. Her face burning the specific shade of red that only comes when you know every single pair of eyes in the room belongs to someone who will never, in any version of their life, understand what it means to need this job. She was 26 years old. She weighed 273 pounds. She had a student loan she was never going to finish paying and a mother back in Sudbury with a knee that needed surgery and no coverage to pay for it. She had taken the catering shift because her regular job at the dental office paid $14 an hour, and that was not enough, and it had never been enough, and she had learned a long time ago that shame is a luxury she simply could not afford. So she crouched down. She picked up the broken glass with her bare hands, careful and methodical, the way her grandmother had taught her to do anything embarrassing, quietly, without making it worse. One of the other servers, a young man named Theo, appeared at her side with a cloth. She gave him a grateful look. He gave her one back. The moment lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then a voice cut through the room like a blade. Good Lord, they're really letting anyone work these events now, aren't they? The woman who said it was standing near the head table, dressed in a gown the color of old money. Deep green satin, square neckline, jewelry that probably cost more than Juniper's entire building. Her name, Juniper would learn later, was Constance Villeneuve. She was 44. She was the fiancée of the man whose mother's 80th birthday party this was. She had the particular kind of cruelty that had been handed down to her through 3 generations of people who had never once been told no. A few people laughed. Not many, maybe 5 or 6. But enough. Enough that the sound existed, and Juniper had to absorb it and keep moving. She finished picking up the glass. She stood. She exhaled. I'm very sorry for the disruption, she said. To no one in particular. To the general direction of the room. The way she had been trained to. Please enjoy your evening. She walked back toward the service corridor and did not look at Constance Villeneuve. She would not give her the satisfaction. She had been not giving people like that the satisfaction since she was 11 years old, and she was very, very good at it by now. What Juniper did not know, what she had no way of knowing, was that a man standing at the far edge of the ballroom had watched the entire thing unfold. Not the fall, the aftermath. The way she knelt down without hesitation. The way she didn't cry, didn't argue, didn't crumple. The way she apologized to the room for an inconvenience that was not really an inconvenience, with a dignity so complete and so quiet that it looked, from where he was standing, like something rare. His name was Remy Fontenot. He was 41 years old. He had not become the kind of man he was by being careless with his attention, and he was not careless with it now. He watched her walk back through the service door. Then he turned back to the room, picked up his glass of scotch, and said nothing. The Harlow Grand was not the kind of venue that hired through an agency without checking references 3 times, and it was not the kind of venue that assigned servers carelessly. Juniper had worked 6 events there over the past year and a half. She knew the layout well enough to navigate it in near darkness, which came in useful around 9:30 that evening, when the lights in the east corridor flickered and died, and she had to feel her way to the secondary bar with a tray of sparkling water glasses balanced on her forearm. She also knew, from working enough of these events, how to spot someone who shouldn't be where they were. The woman she found near the glass conservatory at the east end of the building was small and white-haired, dressed in an extraordinary navy blue gown that had clearly been tailored for a body that was once taller and more upright than the one wearing it now. She was standing at the window, looking out at the garden with an expression that had moved past confusion into something more private, something that lived behind the eyes rather than on the face. Juniper set her tray down on a side table. "Hi there," she said gently. The woman looked at her. She had the most beautiful eyes, pale gray, still sharp in some places, blurred in others, like a photograph taken slightly out of focus. "I'm looking for the dining room," the woman said. "I was just going to sit for a moment, but I can't seem to find it now." "That's all right," Juniper said. "It moves around a bit in these big buildings. They don't like to stay in one place." The woman blinked. Then, slowly, she smiled. "That's exactly right," she said. "I've always thought so." Her name, embroidered inside the collar of her evening wrap in small, neat stitches the way old-fashioned women sometimes do, was Odette. Odette Fontenot, the birthday girl. The reason for all of it, the flowers and the champagne and the 230 guests and the woman in green satin who had laughed at Juniper in front of all of them. Juniper did not know any of this yet. She just knew that this woman was lost and cold and had the particular look of someone who had recently been frightened and was working hard not to show it. "Let's go find it together," Juniper said. "I need to head back that way anyway." She offered her arm. Odette took it. They walked slowly, the way Odette needed to walk, Juniper adjusting her pace without thinking about it, talking quietly about the conservatory, the orchids, the way the garden looked at night, the temperature dropping outside. Small things, real things. The kind of conversation that has nothing to do with an occasion and everything to do with a person. By the time they reached the threshold of the main ballroom, Odette seemed steadier. She was holding Juniper's arm with both hands now, the way you hold something you trust. "You're very kind," Odette said. "What's your name?" "Juniper. But everyone calls me Junie." Odette repeated it softly, as though placing it somewhere she would remember it. "That's a lovely name. Botanical. My mum was a gardener." Odette patted her hand. "Mine too." They stepped back into the light of the ballroom together, and that was when Constance Villeneuve saw them. What happened next happened quickly, the way bad things usually do. Constance crossed the room with the particular efficiency of a woman who decided something and intended to finish deciding it in public. She arrived at the threshold just as Juniper was helping Odette to a chair near the edge of the room, and she stood with her arms crossed and her glass held out to the side, as though someone would take it from her. And she looked at Juniper with an expression that was almost clinical in its dislike. "What do you think you're doing?" Juniper looked up. "Madame Fontenot needed some assistance finding her way back. I walked her over." "You were alone with her for how long? In a corridor?" Constance's voice was smooth and cold and perfectly calibrated. The kind of voice that has been trained over decades to make accusations sound like observations. "She doesn't know you, your staff. You had no business touching her." "She was disoriented," Juniper said, keeping her voice even. "I was making sure she was safe." "You were making sure she was safe." Constance repeated it back to her with a small smile that had nothing warm in it. "Right. And the champagne you destroyed earlier, were you making sure that was safe too?" A few heads turned. Not all of them, but enough. Odette, from her chair, said nothing. She had retreated back behind her eyes. Juniper could see it happening. The way the confusion returned when the atmosphere changed, when voices became sharp, when the room stopped being safe. She knew that look. She had seen it in her grandmother before the diagnosis. That particular stillness that is not peace but its imitation. Constance took a step closer to Odette. "Maman, come with me. I'll take you back to the family table." Odette looked up at her. Something moved across the older woman's face. Not fear exactly, but its cousin. She reached out, almost without meaning to, and found Juniper's hand. Constance's eyes moved down to their joined hands. Her jaw tightened. "Let go of her," she said. Juniper did not let go. "When she's ready." The silence between them was short but complete. Then Constance raised her hand. It was not a theatrical gesture. It was not slow or telegraphed the way they do it in films. It was fast and businesslike, the motion of a woman who was accustomed to getting her way and had simply decided that this was the moment. The ring she wore on her right hand was a wide platinum band set with a row of princess-cut diamonds. The kind of ring that costs as much as a car and leaves a mark. And she brought it up and back in one swift motion aimed directly at Juniper's face. Juniper did not flinch. She turned her body, putting herself between Constance's hand and Odette, and the ring caught her across the left cheekbone, instead of wherever Constance had intended it to land. The crack of it was audible. Not a slap. A blow. The room went absolutely silent. Juniper straightened up slowly. The side of her face was already burning. She could feel it, that specific deep ache that comes from a strike over bone rather than soft tissue. She kept both hands on Odette's shoulders. The older woman was trembling. She did not cry. She did not touch her face. She looked at Constance Villeneuve with the same expression she had worn when she'd knelt on the marble floor an hour earlier, with champagne in her hair and 200 people watching. Steady and quiet and completely unwilling to come apart. "That's enough," she said. 3 words, flat and clear as a line drawn on paper. Constance opened her mouth. Then she looked past Juniper at something in the middle distance, and whatever she saw there made the color drain out of her face in a way that was very different from embarrassment. Remy Fontenot had been standing 12 feet away. He had seen the whole thing. He had crossed the room without anyone quite registering that he was moving. And he was standing there now with his glass of scotch still in his hand, and an expression on his face that was very calm and very still in the specific way that, if you knew what to look for, was significantly more frightening than anger. He was a tall man. He had the kind of face that had once been conventionally handsome and had since become something more interesting. Heavier through the jaw, a scar above his right eyebrow, gray at his temples, eyes that were very dark and very watchful. He wore his tuxedo the way men wear clothes they don't particularly care about but know how to inhabit, easily, without thinking. He looked at Constance. He did not say anything for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, "Leave." Constance blinked. "Remy, this woman was leave," he said again. Same volume, same tone. The word was not an instruction, it was the description of something that was already happening. Constance left. She crossed the room and went through the door near the south wall, and the dress she had paid $7,000 for made no sound as she went. The room held its breath until she was gone, and then exhaled all at once, and conversations resumed, and the small orchestra near the east wall started up again. And the evening continued the way evenings like this always continue, as though the thing that just happened had not quite happened yet. Remy turned to his mother. "Maman." His voice when he spoke to her was completely different. Soft, unhurried. The voice of someone who had learned how to hold a space steady for someone else to move through. "How are you feeling?" Odette looked up at him, her eyes focused. "Remy," she said, with a relief that had nothing performed about it. "I got confused again." "I know. It's all right." He crouched down in front of her chair, eye level, the way you do when you want someone to feel anchored. "You're safe." She reached up and touched his face. He let her. The gesture was private, and Juniper looked away, because some things aren't meant for anyone other than the people involved in them. Then Odette said, "The young woman found me. She was very good." "I know," Remy said. "I saw." There was a pause. Then Juniper felt his gaze settle on her, and she looked back at him, and they looked at each other for a moment. The way 2 people look at each other when neither of them yet knows what to do with what they've just been through together. "Are you injured?" he said. "I'm fine." He looked at her cheek. She knew from the heat of it that it was already visible. "You're not fine," he said. It was not an argument, just a correction. "I've had worse," she said, which was true, and which she hadn't meant to say out loud. Something moved through his expression. It was gone quickly. "I'd like someone to look at that. I have 4 more hours on my shift." He was quiet for a moment. "What's your name?" "Juniper Walsh." He stood up from his crouch. He was much taller standing. He extended his hand, a formal gesture, oddly careful. She shook it. "Remy Fontenot," he said. "This is my mother's birthday, and you just took a blow that was meant for her. I owe you considerably more than a conversation." "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I would have done the same thing for anyone." He looked at her for a moment. "I believe you," he said. "That's the part that makes it remarkable." She finished her shift. Of course she did. She wasn't the kind of person who didn't. She iced her face in the staff bathroom at 11:15, pressing a bag of ice wrapped in a tea towel against her cheekbone and thinking about absolutely nothing. The specific kind of nothing that follows adrenaline. Flat and exhausted and very quiet. Theo came and found her and didn't say anything useful. Just sat on the counter next to her and ate the leftover canapes they weren't supposed to eat, and she was grateful for it. She changed out of her uniform and walked to the parking structure on Argyle Street in the cold Montreal November, her breath making small clouds ahead of her, her bag on her shoulder, and her shoes that were wrong for walking pressed against her feet in a specific way. Bad shoes pressed at the end of a long shift. She was thinking about the bus schedule. She was thinking about whether her mother had taken her medication. She was not thinking about Remy Fontenot, because she was a practical person, and practical people do not spend time thinking about men like that. There was a car waiting at the exit of the parking structure, not blocking traffic. Just there, a black sedan, engine running, driver standing outside it in a way that suggested he'd been standing there for a while and was in no hurry. The driver caught her eye and said politely, "Miss Walsh?" Juniper stopped. "Yes." "Mr. Fontenot asked me to see you home safely, and to give you this." He held out an envelope. She took it, opened it. Inside was a card. Heavy stock. Nothing printed on it, with a phone number written in careful, unhurried handwriting. And below it, a single sentence, "For whatever comes next, if you need it." She looked at the car. She looked at the envelope. She thought about the bus, and the cold, and the 40-minute ride back to her apartment in NDG, and the cheekbone that was now the size and color of a small plum. She got in the car. She told herself it was a practical decision. Later, she would not be sure that was entirely true. Constance Villeneuve was gone within the week. Not just from the engagement, from Montreal, from the Fontenot circle, from whatever orbit she had been inhabiting for the preceding 2 years. Juniper heard about it from Theo, who heard about it from someone who catered the Fontenots' regular Thursday dinners, which were apparently a standing institution requiring 6 servers and a wine specialist. She did not hear from Remy Fontenot for 11 days. When she did, it was a text message, not effusive, not explained. "I'd like to apologize properly. Dinner, if you're willing. I know a place that won't require a uniform." She read it 3 times. She was sitting in the dental office on her lunch break, eating the sandwich she'd made at 6 in the morning, looking at the message on her phone. Outside the window, St. Catherine Street was grey and wet and full of people walking quickly in the November cold. She thought about what she knew about Remy Fontenot. She thought about what everyone in Montreal's catering industry knew about him, not said out loud but understood. The kind of business that doesn't get fully explained. The kind of reputation that precedes a man into every room he enters. The particular quality of the quiet that happened around him, and the way Constance's face had gone white, and the way 230 guests had all looked somewhere else at exactly the same moment. She also thought about Odette, and the way she had held Juniper's arm in the corridor, and the weight of it, and what it meant to be held like that by someone who trusted you simply because you were there. She typed back, "What kind of place?" He responded in under a minute. "The kind with cloth napkins and no background music." Tuesday, 7 p.m. "I'll send the address." She looked at the message for a long time. Then she typed, "All right." She finished her sandwich. She went back to work. She did not tell anyone, because there was nothing to tell yet, and she had learned, over 26 years of having very little control over what happened to her, to be extremely careful with the things she let herself want before she knew what they were. Dinner was at a restaurant in Outremont that did not have its name on the door, only a small brass number, and the maitre d' knew Remy's name and showed them to a table in the back corner without being asked. The table was private without being hidden. The napkins were, as promised, cloth. He stood when she arrived. That surprised her. She was used to rooms that adjusted themselves around her, moved chairs to accommodate, cleared extra space without being asked, maintained a specific kind of careful neutral expression that meant they were thinking about her body and trying not to look like they were. She had been navigating it since she was a teenager, and she had made her peace with it, mostly, the way you make your peace with weather. Remy Fontenot looked at her face when she walked in, the way you look at someone's face, not at anything else. He said hello, and he meant it, and then he waited for her to sit down before he did. It was a small thing. She noticed it anyway. They talked for 3 hours. This surprised her most of all. Not that they talked, but that it was easy. He was not what she had expected, which she supposed she should have anticipated, because people rarely are. He asked her questions and listened to the answers. He told her things without being asked, and did not make it feel like information management. He ordered the wine and let her order the food. And when she picked the wrong thing accidentally, the duck, which she remembered halfway through ordering that she doesn't actually like, he said nothing, and when it arrived, he traded her plates without comment, and she ate his lamb instead, and it was the most natural transaction she'd had with another person in recent memory. He told her, not in those exact words, but close enough, what he was, what he ran, what the business looked like, and what it required, and what kind of life it made. He was not apologetic about it. He was not proud about it either. He described it the way you described a place you grew up, with a kind of clear-eyed familiarity that acknowledged it without excusing it. She appreciated the honesty more than he probably knew. She told him about Sudbury, and her mother's knee, and the dental office. She told him about the student loan and the catering shifts, and the grandmother who had died with the same blurring behind the eyes that she had seen in Odette. And he listened to all of it with the same quality of attention he had probably given to things that mattered considerably more, and she felt for the first time in a long time that she was worth listening to. Outside, it had started to snow. Montreal November becoming Montreal. December. The first real snow of the season. The kind that sticks and makes everything briefly equal. The ugly and the beautiful. The expensive and the broken. All of it white and quiet under the same sky. He walked her to the car he had sent for her. They stood outside the restaurant in the snow for a moment. "I'd like to see you again," he said. She looked at him. She thought about what she knew about men like this, and what she knew about herself, and what it would mean to say yes, and what it would mean to say no, and what it would mean to pretend she hadn't noticed, over the course of 3 hours at a table in a restaurant that didn't have its name on the door, that she had stopped waiting for him to disappoint her somewhere around the 2nd hour, and he hadn't. "I have Wednesdays off," she said. He smiled. It changed his face in a way she hadn't expected. Not younger, exactly. Less defended. The face underneath the face. "Wednesday then," he said. She got in the car. The snow came down around the streetlights in the long, patient way snow does when it intends to stay. She looked out the window as the car pulled away and didn't let herself look back. Not because she didn't want to, but because she had learned, very carefully, over a long time, to move through things one moment at a time. She thought about the corridor at the Harlow Grand, and Odette's hand on her arm, and the cold certainty with which she had put herself between that ring and that old woman's face without hesitating, without calculating, without asking herself whether she was the right person for it. She thought, "I have never once in my life waited to be the right person for something before I did it." The car moved through the snowy streets. The city was white and quiet and full of things that hadn't happened yet. She let herself look forward to Wednesday,